Hi, good morning. I cover the LA Times for a lot of people in CCL. Oh my gosh. I subscribe to the paper, so I check every morning for about 2 years now, and I'll send out an email to everybody to encourage them to write. So I'm an amateur. If you guys are good at composition or writing, please offer tips as well as what I have to say. So I have 2 sample letters. You all have on your table, because I wasn't sure if it would show up on the screen. One is written by Ed Dignan of Long Beach. Is he here in this room right now? He's at another meeting? Oh, okay. His ears are going to be burning now because he doesn't know I took his letter. But it was published in early January, and it had to do with Rex Tillerson, who was nominated for Secretary of State, but I guess now he is, I don't know, maybe he's gone through the hearing process. The second letter, let's see, is from Rabbi Judi Weiss, and if nobody here has heard of her before, you're going to hear about her now. She's a CCL member who lives in Brookline, Massachusetts, and she is the most prolific CCL writer I think there is. She publishes in newspapers in Texas, Missouri, South Carolina. I've seen her name in the LA Times as well. I don't know how she has the time, but she follows climate articles, editorials, and she writes amazing letters. So, and they always seem to publish her. So she has a magic touch, and I wanted you to know her name, so if any one of you want to just Google her, I'm sure you'll find a letter online. So just to point out some similarities between the letters, notice how they both start out with thank you or I appreciate. That's usually a good way to get a letter published, is to thank the paper for even discussing climate change in the paper. Okay, I'll just get this basic housekeeping out of the way. Make sure that you write in response to something that appeared in that paper. Don't have some issue you just want to air. You want to find an article, an editorial, or an op-ed and respond to that. Put the title of that piece in the subject line of your email. Always put your name, address, phone number. They're not going to publish it, but they need that for verification. So if you just sign your name, they're not going to run you. Okay, keep to about 150 words. I think the OC register lets you go up to 200 words, but for the most part, I think 150 is a good amount. Don't use attachments. They won't even look at your email. And try and respond if you can within 2 days. Your exercise today is going to be at the end of my talk for about the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You'll find this on your table. It's the editorial, it was an op-ed that was in the LA Times 2 days ago. And in a nutshell, what it says is, if you think reducing carbon emissions is expensive, try climate change. So he's basically, that's his point, is we are already burdened by the economic problems caused by climate change. And on the back is the picture that came with the article, was very poignant to me. This is a flood in Louisiana in August of this year. And I do love animals, and the dog's face was so bewildered, and it's like he's asking us to please do something. I just thought it was a great picture, so I included that as well. And so think about a little bit about how to respond to that letter. Oh, I put them out on tables. Okay, so I'm going to run through. Not all of us are as gifted as Rabbi Judi Weiss. So those of us who struggle a little bit with writing or have writer's block, I'll just run through some very basics. First of all, come up with your thesis statement. And Ed Dignan's letter was great. First he starts out with appreciation, and then what I think is his thesis is the time should go a step further. Ask Tillerson to ratchet up the support he's already expressed for a national tax on carbon. I think that's a thesis statement, which is, what's your main point? What's your main idea? And then in your mind, you don't have to write this, but in your mind, ask yourselves, why? Why is that important? Why should we ask Tillerson to work on a national carbon tax? Then ask yourself, because. So that's your supporting statement. Because beyond just awareness of fossil fuels' impact on climate change, oil companies see a huge future investing in clean energy. That's why. Next, they prefer a steadily rising carbon tax to reduce the demand for fossil fuels. So he talks another because statement. And also, it's palatable to conservatives. So here he's got his thesis statement, which is Rex Tillerson needs to work on this policy. Why? Because. And boom, you've got your letter. And then at the end, you just have to circle back to your thesis. And he said, Tillerson should have no problem selling that to Trump. So those are kind of the, that's the framework. And within that framework, you can play around with it, you can elaborate, and you can dress it up a little bit. You can put it in a different order, but it's important that in your own minds, you have the main idea and what your supporting statements would be. If you have room, you might point out the opposite argument. Well, some people say, you know, it's too expensive to lower carbon emissions, or there would be job loss in the fossil fuel industry, et cetera. But then you can explain why that's not a good argument. And finally, if you have a quote from an authority, is a good idea. So sometimes in my letters, I'll say, according to the Remy study of 2014, and I'll give some statistic. So if you have a quote from an authority that helps support your statement, okay. So why do we do it? Why do we write letters to the editor? Obviously, we want to build political will. We want other people to take action. We want other people to care. Also, your elected officials do read the papers and check out what the opinions are about different subjects, and their staff usually keep tabs. If you notice on Judi Weiss's letter, the last paragraph, I don't know how she knows these people because she's in Massachusetts. This was a Texas paper, I think. But she lists the names. She says, Senator Roy Blunt and blah, blah, blah. Should know, Americans want Congress to help cut emissions and fight climate change. Wouldn't that be great? If you were a congressperson and, oh my gosh, my name's in the paper, and they need to know that I'm I'm supposed to be working on climate change. So if you can include the name of your official in your note, in your letter, excuse me, that's also very beneficial. Your letters help to get other people to join you. The newspaper also, when they get tons of letters on a subject, they're more likely to publish a letter on that subject. They're more likely to, if there's a climate change article, they'll put it on the front page or above the fold. So there are a lot of decisions that they make based on the influx of letters they get. Exactly. That's right. You're part of a pool. And to use an ocean metaphor, the ocean swell is going up and you're in there. That's very true. And it can be, you can just write the most beautiful letter. As Grace knows, you've written gorgeous letters, but they just don't get published, or they cut a lot of them out. You just can't take it personally. Just get back there. Who knows why they didn't write your letter? But don't let that discourage you. You're part of a movement, and you will get published. I got my first 2-3 letters. I thought, oh, this is easy. Look, I can just write a letter and it goes in. Then nothing for a year and a half, and I thought, well, they have me on a blacklist or something. And that was my best work, you know. Your best work is on the cutting room floor, huh? But then they published one more, so. Also, I write to clarify my own thinking. A lot of us think we know what we think we know, but you really don't. And when I was in school, I remember a teacher telling me that students would come to him and say, well, I know what I want to say, but I just can't find a way to say it. His response was, if you cannot find a way to say it, you don't really know what it is you're trying to say. So we may have a general idea of what we want to say about climate change and how urgent it is and the import of it, but we just can't quite put it together. But if you practice writing, it clears the cobwebs out. You think better, you can present to your congressperson better, you can influence your neighbor, the person standing next to you in the cafeteria who says something. Sometimes you can mention climate change and somebody will say, well, it's just part of the natural cycles. It's nothing really to worry about. And if you've thought a lot about how you want to say something, you will have a good answer for that. Okay, so it'll help you think better, be a better person, okay? Whoops, oh, that's the end of the show, okay. All right, well, we have about 5 minutes, right? 7 minutes, okay. Pick a partner. You've got your article here. I don't expect you to have time to read the whole thing, but in a nutshell, it's saying no matter how, addressing carbon emissions will take effort, and whatever it will cost, the cost of climate change itself is far worse. Sometimes you can pick out a piece of information. In the first paragraph on the third column, it says, effective climate policies helped reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than 10% in the US during the Obama years, while the economy as a whole grew by more than 15%. So if you catch a piece in the article, you can kind of glom onto that and use that. So pair off, there's some pens and note paper, and just briefly write a thesis statement, briefly write some And ask yourselves why. Why do I think that? Answer yourself because. Sketch those out. Anybody who has a letter, raise your hand, and we'll ask you to read your letter. And it won't be finished, but if you have at least a thesis statement and a few supporting statements. So take a few minutes, talk amongst yourselves, and find a good thesis.